the first strike in the next global conflict. Well, it won't actually be a dramatic missile launch lighting up the night sky.
No, definitely not.
Right. It will be the silent, imperceptible hum of a server farm in some windowless room, just executing code that shuts down a continent's power grid before a single alarm even sounds.
Exactly.
So forget that whole Hollywood imagery of massive tank columns rolling across borders or fighter jets scrambling at dawn. The most destructive conflicts of our future are being designed to begin invisibly. They completely bypass the physical world until the strategic damage is already done.
It fundamentally rewrites our entire understanding of vulnerability. I mean, we are so conditioned to look for kinetic threats.
Like troops massing on a border.
Right, or ships leaving a port. But the true front line is no longer geographic. It's algorithmic and electromagnetic.
Yeah. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in some really fascinating insights from a document called The Invisible Front, The Evolution of Information Age Warfare.
It's a great read.
It really is. And our mission here is basically to shortcut your learning curve on this massive pivot. We are moving completely out of the physical industrial age of warfare and diving headfirst into the highly interconnected digital reality of the information age.
Which is a transition that affects literally everyone.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to me, the cleanest way to visualize this shift is actually to look at board games.
Oh, I like this.
Right. So for centuries, warfare was essentially a massive high-stakes game of risk. It was all about visible strength, moving your pieces across a physical map, capturing geographic territory, and, slowly grinding down your opponent's industrial capacity.
Very slow, very physical.
Exactly. But the reality we are facing today, it is much more like a high-speed, invisible game of cyber chess. And in this modern arena, controlling the Wi-Fi connection to the board is infinitely more critical than the actual pieces you have in play.
That analogy hits the mark perfectly. And for you listening, understanding this isn't just, an abstract intellectual exercise about military theory.
Right, it's not just for generals.
Exactly. It is deeply personal. Because this new invisible front line isn't relegated to some distant, dusty battlefield. It runs straight through the civilian technology you rely on every single day.
Wow.
Yeah, the GPS mapping on your phone, the logistics networks that stock your grocery store, and even the financial systems that process your paycheck.
That is genuinely terrifying when you really think about it. So let's get right into how these conflicts actually initiate. Because when you strip away the theory, the reality of this invisible first strike is staggering.
It really is.
We are so used to military power being something you can just count. Like you could literally count the dreadnoughts in a navy or the divisions in an army.
Right, the traditional metrics of power.
But the modern battlefield is, it's an interconnected ecosystem. A conflict tomorrow begins with silent cyber intrusions that just fracture communication networks. It starts with targeted disruptions to satellites orbiting in the exosphere.
And electronic warfare campaigns that completely blind a nation's radar grids.
Exactly. So victory no longer belongs to the side with the thickest armor. It actually belongs to the side that controls the electromagnetic spectrum.
That is the ultimate high ground.
No, but hold on. Let me push back on this a little bit. Because cyber attacks and jammed radars, they don't actually capture territory.
Right. No, not directly.
Right. You can shut down a power grid from a laptop, sure, but eventually, don't you still need a human soldier and boots to hold a city street? Like, doesn't the side with the bigger artillery still physically win the firefight?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, those physical kinetic weapons are actually entirely useless without the data that directs them.
Wait, entirely useless?
Literally useless. A state-of-the-art $100 million fighter jet or a heavily armored tank is functionally blind, deaf, and dumb without its network.
Wow.
Yeah, because modern combat generates a literal tsunami of data. We are talking about thousands of simultaneous overlapping data streams.
Like what kind of data?
Continuous radar feeds, high-resolution satellite imagery, drone telemetry, electronic signal intercepts, and thermal signatures, all happening at once.
That's just an unimaginable amount of information.
It is. And the side that can ingest that data, process it, and make a decision faster gains what strategists call the operational initiative.
Okay, so it's not about having the biggest gun. It's about knowing exactly where to point it first.
Precisely. Let's look at the actual mechanism of electronic warfare, or EW.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So radar jamming isn't just magically turning off the enemy's screen like flipping a switch. It actually involves blasting the electromagnetic spectrum with so much garbage noise, so many false signals, that the enemy's sensors just cannot distinguish between a flock of geese and an incoming stealth bomber.
Oh, wow. So you're just overloading them.
Exactly. You're effectively blinding them with light. And if you can blind their sensors and sever their comms, their artillery doesn't even know the coordinates to fire upon.
And I imagine their commanders don't even know where their own troops are.
They don't. You neutralize the physical threat without ever firing a single kinetic round. A blind Goliath is really just a very large, stationary target.
Which brings us to the core bottleneck of this whole data tsunami, which is, well, the human brain.
Yes.
We simply aren't built for this. A human commander cannot simultaneously synthesize satellite feeds, cyber threat intelligence, localized radar, and drone telemetry to make a split-second tactical decision.
It's biologically impossible.
Right. The human processing speed is actually a massive liability now.
It is the primary bottleneck. And that is exactly why militaries around the world are rushing to integrate artificial intelligence at literally every level of command.
But it is crucial to separate the reality of military AI from the science fiction tropes.
Yes, please. We aren't talking about humanoid robots walking across a battlefield making moral judgments.
Right, no Terminators roaming around. Here's where it gets really interesting. The implementation of AI is entirely about decision acceleration and predictive networking.
That's the real revelation.
Think about how a modern engagement might happen. A drone spots an anomaly in a tree line. In fractions of a second, an AI system cross-references that shape with satellite imagery, identifies it as a hostile mobile missile launcher, analyzes all the available friendly assets in the region, and just hands the human commander a prioritized menu of strike options.
All in the time it takes a human to blink.
Exactly. It completely collapses the old boundaries of warfare. Because historically, you had these deep compartments, the army fought on land, the Navy handled the sea, the Air Force controlled the skies.
And they operated in distinct silos, communicating relatively slowly across those boundaries.
Right. But to understand the modern shift, think about the evolution of mobile phones.
Oh, I'm with you.
The old military branches were essentially like flip phones. They were reliable, sure, but they essentially did one job independently, making a call.
That makes perfect sense.
But modern integrated warfare, however, is a smartphone ecosystem. In a smart home environment, your thermostat talks to your fridge, which talks to your front door lock. It's a unified network.
Everything is connected.
Yes. Today, a fighter jet is not just a platform for dropping bombs. It is a flying sensor node. It is instantly sharing telemetry with a satellite, which is simultaneously feeding targeting data to a naval destroyer hundreds of miles away. It's one massive, breathing ecosystem.
And while that smartphone ecosystem creates astonishing operational capability, it also introduces a catastrophic level of vulnerability.
How so?
Well, to use your smart home analogy, it is incredibly convenient that all your appliances are networked. But it also means that if a malicious actor hacks your smart fridge, they can potentially unlock your front door.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So if a naval carrier strike group is entirely dependent on cloud-based AI, satellite ISR, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and encrypted comms, well, what happens when that network is compromised?
The fleet is completely paralyzed.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how many missiles are in the tubes if the targeting system is locked out. It's like having a top-of-the-line smartphone, but someone maliciously corrupts the operating system. The 4K camera and the fast processor, they are totally useless if the device just won't boot up.
Exactly. The network is the center of gravity now. That is why cyber and electronic warfare are no longer just support functions.
They're the main event.
Yes, they are the primary offensive weapons of the modern era. You attack the data links, you sever the connectivity. And this interconnected, hyper-vulnerable reality completely upends the economic models that have governed warfare for the last century.
This is where the math gets really brutal. We've watched this unfold vividly in Ukraine. The battlefield has become utterly transparent.
There's nowhere to hide.
Right, you just cannot hide a massive multi-million-dollar armor formation anymore. There are too many sensors, too many eyes in the sky, and the proliferation of low-cost, highly capable drones has changed the entire economic calculus of attrition.
It's shifted everything.
We are moving into an era of drone swarms. Yeah. And I don't just mean a David versus Goliath scenario. It's much more insidious than that.
How do you mean?
Well, we're looking at a dynamic where a highly advanced $3 million surface-to-air missile is basically forced to intercept a $20,000 mass-produced autonomous drone.
The math on that is just unsustainable.
Exactly. So David doesn't just beat Goliath. 1,000 cheap, buzzing Davids completely bankrupt Goliath. You don't even need to destroy the superpower's military bases. You just force them to exhaust their exquisite, wildly expensive munitions on cheap plastic and off-the-shelf rotors.
What's fascinating here is how the ecosystem punishes rigidity and rewards decentralized adaptability.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, a column of heavy tanks is rigid. It represents a massive concentration of capital and human life in a single, easily identifiable location.
A big, expensive target.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a distributed swarm of semi-autonomous drones is adaptable. It disperses risk across hundreds of cheap platforms. But this introduces a really profound operational dilemma as we scale up this AI integration.
Because of the speed, right?
Yes. As these swarms become more sophisticated, they will need to adapt their flight paths, identify targets, and execute maneuvers on the fly without a human piloting every single unit.
Because if a human has to manually approve every single course correction for 1,000 swarming drones, the swarm loses its speed advantage.
Precisely. The system must operate at machine speed to be effective. But this raises the terrifying question of control.
Right. Who is actually in charge?
Exactly. When battlefield conditions are shifting exponentially faster than human cognition, can human commanders realistically maintain any meaningful oversight?
Probably not.
If an AI system detects an incoming threat and initiates a defensive swarm maneuver in 3 milliseconds, the human is no longer a commander. They are basically just a spectator receiving a push notification about an event that has already concluded.
Wow. The human is just the liability in the loop.
Exactly.
And because this swarm and hack reality is so undeniable, we are seeing the world's major powers completely tear down their historical military structures to adapt.
Everyone is scrambling.
The United States is desperately pushing toward JADC2, which stands for Joint All-Domain Command and Control. It's an incredibly ambitious attempt to wire every single sensor and every single shooter across land, sea, air, space, and cyber into a single pane of glass.
A massive undertaking.
Meanwhile, China is actively restructuring around what they call intelligentized warfare, focusing heavily on AI and systems destruction. Russia is obviously internalizing deep, painful lessons in electronic warfare from their current conflicts. And crucially, India is in the middle of a massive structural metamorphosis.
India actually provides a perfect real-world case study of this adaptation.
Yeah, let's talk about Operation Sindhoor.
Right. So consider their recent Operation Sindhoor. This wasn't just a standard run-of-the-mill military drill. It was a rigorous stress test of multi-domain synchronization.
How did it work?
They successfully networked their long-range radar arrays, their air defense batteries, their electronic warfare units, and their command grids into one cohesive response mechanism. Furthermore, India is rapidly shifting toward a theater command structure.
Which, to break that down mechanistically, means flattening the corporate hierarchy of the military, right?
Essentially, yes.
Because in the old system, if an army unit spotted a threat at sea, the request had to go up the army chain of command, across to the navy chain of command, and then all the way down to a ship. It took hours.
Too slow for today's threats.
Right. But a theater command puts all assets, ships, jets, tanks, cyber units, under one regional boss for instant execution.
That's exactly how it works. You eliminate the bureaucratic friction. And in the highly militarized, geographically vast Indo-Pacific environment, that friction is literally deadly.
Because you don't have time to wait.
Right. You have contested maritime choke points overlapping with intense cyber espionage, satellite surveillance, and the constant threat of long-range precision strikes.
It's a powder keg.
It is. A fragmented, siloed military structure simply cannot react fast enough to survive in that environment. Integrated, flattened command architecture is an absolute necessity for survival. Time itself is the new strategic weapon.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now? Because as these militaries integrate their networks to chase absolute speed, they are pulling in everything around them.
Everything becomes a target.
The line between a military target and civilian infrastructure has completely evaporated. The semiconductor chips inside your kid's gaming console, the telecom cables routing your text messages, the cloud servers hosting your company's data, the commercial GPS network that guides your food delivery.
It's all connected.
All of it is technically part of the national security frontline.
This raises an important question about the modern definition of national sovereignty.
How so?
Historically, sovereignty was about defending physical borders with an army. Today, military power is fundamentally dependent on technological sovereignty.
Which means what, exactly?
It means if a nation relies on foreign manufactured semiconductors, foreign AI algorithms, or foreign telecommunications hardware, they are strategically vulnerable before a geopolitical crisis even begins.
It's a profound realization. The factory stamping out microchips is just as critical to national defense as a nuclear silo.
Absolutely.
Industrial policy is now completely indistinguishable from military policy. You can't fight a 21st century war if your supply chain for logic boards is controlled by your adversary. It fundamentally shifts how we view the global economy.
It really does. Future military supremacy belongs to the nation that can secure its technological ecosystem, maintain network resilience under attack, and iterate its software faster than its opponent.
Software over hardware.
Exactly. Physical force inventories are secondary to network survivability.
But, for all this discussion about hyperfast algorithms, automated swarms, and invisible cyber fronts, we have to ground this in a very sobering reality.
It always comes back to the human element.
It does. At its absolute core, war remains a human endeavor. Technology constantly reshapes the battlefield, it increases the lethality and compresses the timeline. But ultimately, machines don't start wars.
No, they don't.
Nations, governments, and human leaders decide why wars are fought.
They do, but that introduces the ultimate paradox of the information age.
Which is?
We are engineering systems designed to process threats and initiate responses at blinding sub-second speeds. But our political and diplomatic systems still operate at the speed of human deliberation.
Which is very, very slow.
Right. As these automated battle networks become deeply intertwined, the consequences of a human strategic failure become exponentially more dangerous.
Because the machines might actually strip us of the ability to stop a conflict once it begins.
Exactly. Imagine a scenario where a faulty sensor reading or a misunderstood cyber probe is interpreted by an AI as an imminent attack.
Like a false positive.
Yes. The system instantly initiates a pre-programmed automated countermeasure. The adversary's automated systems detect that countermeasure and escalate in response.
Oh, wow.
You could have a cascading escalation that unfolds in a matter of minutes. Far too fast for diplomats to pick up a phone, verify the data, and de-escalate the situation.
The war just starts itself.
The sheer speed of the technology drastically increases the risk of accidental, catastrophic miscalculation.
It's the speed that removes our safety net. The algorithms might not understand the political context, but they will execute the tactical geometry flawlessly and relentlessly.
It is a sobering thought.
It's an incredibly heavy reality to process. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Always good to end on a big question.
Right. We started by tearing down that old Hollywood imagery of warfare, the loud, obvious, kinetic explosions. We've mapped out how the architecture of future conflict is actually designed to be completely invisible.
Unseen and unheard.
Exactly. It relies on silent cyber intrusions, the subtle manipulation of public narratives to fracture societal trust, and the quiet infiltration of critical infrastructure systems long before a conventional army ever mobilizes.
All happening in the background.
So if the new face of global conflict is inherently designed to be undetectable until the trap is already sprung, is it possible that the next major war has already begun, silently running in the background of our daily lives, and we simply lack the sensors to see it?
A chilling but absolutely essential question for all of us to consider.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible systems around you, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us on this Strategic Vanguard podcast. If you found value in this analysis, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We bring you fresh podcasts every Monday here on YouTube and Rumble, and you can also catch the audio versions on Spotify and Amazon Music. Just search for Strategic Vanguard Podcast. For more insights, articles, and discussions, subscribe to our blog at strategicvanguard.com. Your support helps us grow and bring you more in-depth analysis on defense, geopolitics, and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay strategic.